You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's story isn't from a hiker or a camper. It's from a man who spent over 20 years researching cryptids and paranormal creatures, but in the Adirondacks, something began watching him back. One moment, a log sits still on a quiet forest road, and the next, it's a leaping creature flying across the woods in a way no human could. This isn't a legend. It's not a secondhand story. It's a firsthand account from a man who witnessed the incredible. This is the story of Jerimiah Fountain and the Sasquatch that jumped 30 feet. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Jerimiah Fountain today. Jeremiah is a researcher, cryptid researcher for over 20 years, also an experiencer on both the Sasquatch and the Dogman side. He's involved with many other things. He's a podcaster, a fisherman, a survivalist, hunter, founder of the group On the Trail, Cryptid Paranormal Research, and also one of the directors for the International Dogman Project. So there's a lot of really interesting things we could talk about. Tonight is going to be a fun chat, but welcome to the show, Jeremiah. How's it going, man?
Thanks, Jeremiah. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. It's a great Iowa night. It's starting to get warmer up here, so having a good night.
Yeah,
able to talk about
it is
Bigfoot.
up here too. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. It's always good to talk about Bigfoot.
Absolutely. Now you are down in the South, correct?
No, I am up in the Adirondacks in upstate New York.
Oh my goodness! Really? Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. I'm about. I'm sure you've heard of Whitehall, about Whitehall. I'm sure. I'm about 2.5 hours north of Whitehall, so I'm in the upper part of the Adirondacks. I could literally, from our property, I could walk right to the Canadian border.
Oh wow! So that is very much so upper Adirondacks.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'm very, very close to Canada in the St. Lawrence River, and so yeah, I'm right up there, right up here.
That is north of the park, or
of the Adirondack Park.
Yeah,
I'm right on the edge of the park. I'm in what they call the St. Lawrence Seaway Valley, and I'm right on the line of the St. Lawrence Seaway Valley and the Adirondack Park. So I'm right in between two hot spots.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh man, this is great. This is great. Jeremiah, you've had you're involved in many different things, which is really cool. I would love to let's take a few minutes if you'd be able to share. What was it that first got you into the Bigfoot field, or was it something that got you into everything, or maybe it's just been a wild ride the whole time?
Well, yeah, it's been a wild ride, Jeremiah. But as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in cryptids. My mother, when I was about 7 years old, bought me a book. It was called Unexplained Mysteries of the 20th Century. I don't know if you remember that book or not, but I was about 7. I was little. And Mom bought me the book, and I was flipping through the pages, and finally I get to the section about Bigfoot, Yeti, Loch Ness Monster, and I saw a picture of a beautiful woman named Patty. And as soon as I saw Patty's picture, I was my little self was hooked, and that's how it all started. I moved away after high school. I was actually a professional mixed martial artist for a long time as well. I took a nasty kick to the head, never really recovered from it, so I had to retire from that. So I ended up back up here in the Adirondacks, and I'm a big, like you were saying, I'm a big hunter. And in 2001 that's when I had my first encounter on our property. I come from a logging family. We own a lot of land, a lot of properties. And my father used to tell me stories about, weird things that went down on the property. My brother-in-law on several occasions had, they would follow him back to his truck when he was hunting down there. I didn't have an experience down there until 2001. It was muzzleloader season, and I was walking back to my truck. I had about a mile walk back to the truck, and I'm walking down the logging road, and I get about a quarter mile from my truck, and my father had an old skidder down there, like the old log skidders. And I look, and there's a head that's peeping around the log skidder, and with big amber eyes, and kind of took me off guard. I really didn't know what I was looking at. It's something inside me told me that it was something different. Being a hunter up here, we have a lot of wildlife up here. Bear, moose, white-tailed deer. It's wolves. People say wolves aren't. We don't have them up here, but we do. Anyway, and I couldn't really put a finger on what this was. It was looking at me. Well, the head went back behind the skidder again, and at this point I had just turned my headlamp on. It was starting to get dusky, and I start walking again to get to the truck. I tried to, put that in the back of my mind, like it was a regular animal or whatever. So I get to almost the tip of the skidder, and I'm close at this point. I'm about 40 foot away from the nose of the skidder, and I had it lit up, and all of a sudden I see an arm with a hand wrap around the front edge of the skidder, and the head pops out, and then it popped back behind the skidder again. And at this point I froze. I was just absolutely shocked. All of a sudden, this thing leaps out from behind the skidder. There was 2 logs laying horizontal to me, and the first one was about 15 feet in front of the nose of the skidder, and there was one next to it that was about 15 feet away from that. This thing comes launching out from behind the skidder, hits the first log. Now, Jeremiah, when this is going to blow your mind. What happened was when it hit the log. Okay, you know how when people jump, when we say we do a freestanding jump, right? How we squat down, we swing our arms, and make that long jump. But what this thing did is when it hit the log with its feet, it propelled itself off the front half of its feet. It didn't bend its knees. It didn't swing its arms. It just propelled itself off the tip of its feet. And that was amazing. The athleticism was just incredible. And once it hit that log, it went right to the next one, did the same thing off the second one, landed right in front of a tree about another 15 feet away, and went behind the tree. And at this point, I'm thinking, does someone have a private zoo around here I don't know about? Is someone's orangutan get loose? Because that's the only thing I could compare it to at the time, was some sort of great ape. Now I know that's not the case, but anyway, back then that was my original thought process on these things, was they were some sort of mountain ape or whatever. It pops back, it comes back around the front of the tree, and it's just sitting there staring at me. It's doing its bob back and forth, and it was a juvenile. Thing, it had to have been maybe 5 feet, not any taller than that. But people always ask me, well, what did it weigh? And if I had to guess, Jeremiah, I'd say this thing was at least 185, 200 pounds. People say, well, that's not that big. Yeah, well, for 4'11", that's pretty put together. 4'11", 5 foot, 200 pounds is pretty jacked. And so at this point, I wanted to get. I was freaked right out. I like I said, I did not know what this thing was, and I didn't realize until I started thinking about it after I got in the truck. Did I really just see one? But anyway, back to what I was saying. I raised my muzzleloader, and I want everyone to know out there, I am not pro-kill. Unless it's unless you're in dire need of self-defense. I don't believe in shooting at these things and whatnot. And on top of that, they know what guns are. There's no doubt about that. As soon as I pulled my muzzleloader up, I wanted to get a better look at it through my scope. You know what I mean? To see it up close. And as soon as I pulled my muzzleloader up, put it to my shoulder, the thing covers its head up with its arms, and it backs behind that tree again. And that's the last I saw of it. I don't know if they did that drop to the ground, where they'll drop down to the ground and they'll lay there. I don't know if it did that or if it it flew through the underbrush and I didn't see it. I didn't hear anything. So I'm thinking it got behind that tree and it just laid down. But I wasn't going to stick around and find out. I just continued to my truck and I left. And it was very just a bizarre situation that I dealt with during that first encounter. Just very weird, and I didn't have it ruined my fishing and it ruined my hunting for a couple of years. Knowing that they were that close to where I lived.
It's very unique, man, because I talk to a lot of people, but you really touch on some cool stuff, which is I think people forget how athletic these creatures are. So it's no surprise how they're there 1 minute and then they disappear. Well, I mean, how far can they jump? Like you said, they could jump. They landed 15 feet away. Was that right?
15 feet to each log, and then another 15 feet to the tree. And like I said, it propelled itself off the front, almost off its toes. It propelled itself off the ball of its foot. It was incredible. And you're right. People, I don't think a lot of people realize how athletic and how powerful these things are. It's unbelievable.
And
just unreal.
You think of like this is a small one that you said just under 5 feet tall. Imagine you have the power of a adult male. What it could do. Yeah, it blows your mind.
Yeah, if not more. Yeah, it blows your mind. It's wild. It's wild.
You had mentioned that it reminded you of orangutan. Is that because of the way that it looked like?
It's the way it looked. Yep. Yeah. It was that auburnish brown hair. And I want to, get the point across out there. It is not fur. It is hair. A lot of people think that it's fur. It's not. It's hair. Which fur and hair are much different, as you know. And a lot of people out there think it's fur, but it's not. But it looked like an orangutan, a smaller orangutan. The head wasn't really didn't come to a cone. It was kind of in between roundish and in between a cone, conical head. Long arms. Built just jacked. I mean, this thing was jacked. It was very, very impressive, but very, scary at the same time. I like I said, at the time of the encounter, I had no idea what I was dealing with. My mind was all over the place.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah.
I can't imagine what you would have been dealing with as a person who doesn't have all that, information that you have now as a researcher, and you're just trying to, your mind paradigms are shifting. And did you notice any details of the face at all? Was that similar to an orangutan?
It was in between like an ancient human and an ape. You kind of like a cross in between the two. It didn't really look like an orangutan, facial feature wise, but it was like in between, in between like an ancient human and some sort of ape. But as far as it looking just like an orangutan, no.
Okay.
No.
That makes sense, based off a lot of things I've heard. Did it show any emotion to you during that time?
I think it was scared. It was curious and it was scared. I think the curiosity is what, either that, I thought, and I've come back to this over the years, over and over. Now, when this thing jumped out, I think to myself, was it, this thing knew I was coming, obviously. Now, was it curious or was it trying to get away from me? Did it see me? Did it see me in the woods earlier and see me with that weapon? And decide that I wanted to get the heck out of there fast, or was it, was it curious or was it scared? I don't know. I think I would lean more towards after, once it knew I had that weapon on me, I think it was more fear when it put its hands over its head and it got back behind that tree. It was definitely, it was definitely afraid. but I think there was a lot of curiosity there as well. A lot of curiosity.
Absolutely. And after this experience, you know, how did this affect the rest of your life after you had this visual Class A encounter that was pretty intense?
Yeah, like I said, it ruined my hunting for a while. I didn't want to go back down there because I got thinking to myself, well, if there's one down there, there's got to be more, you know. And this is before I started really research. Like I said, it was before I really started researching. But yeah, it was just wild. It was just wild. I think it was like I said before. I just think it was they wanted to get out of there, you know. Just the same as I did. We just both wanted out of there. Just happened to run into each other, you know.
So this kept you away from hunting and fishing for it sounds like a few years. Then
about 3 years.
3 years, and then
yep.
Did you just eventually you're like, okay, I'm going to give this another chance? Time to go back.
I did.
Yeah.
Yep. I said I'm not going to let this thing or these things ruin my passions. You know, so, you know, around a few years later, I got back into my hunting and nothing happened. Like I said, until 2007. I was living in Syracuse at the time. I came up here on the weekend to see my mother. And I went, you know, I decided my tree stand needed some work, and I wasn't going to sit and hunt. I just wanted to get down there, and I wanted to fix my tree stand and have it ready for the next day. So I went down, but I did bring my rifle. You know, my father taught me always from a young age, you know, don't go in the woods unarmed, you know, and I still, to this day, I abide by that. And it's not for the Sasquatches, like I said before, it's for other dangers in the woods, you know, and most of all being other people. If there's other, you know, twisted people out there, you know, yeah, you never know what you're going to run into. But yeah, 2007, I went to work on the tree stand, and after a while, I got it done a lot quicker than I thought I was going to get it done. So I said, you know what the heck, you know, I'm gonna sit for a while, because there was a nice 10-point buck in the area at that time that I wanted to harvest, and I said maybe I'll catch him, you know. So I got in my tree stand and I sat there about 45 minutes, and all of a sudden I hear a god awful beller. Gives me chills just thinking about it. A beller, scream, grunt all at the same time, if that makes sense. And it just ran right through me. And I'm thinking to myself, what was that? And then my memories came back from my first encounter. I'm like, I hope it's not, and I hope it's not related to that, my encounter in any way, shape, or form. You know, but it's something, you know, the goosebumps on my arms and my hair stood up, and I said, I think it's time to get out of here. So I, you know, I got out of the tree stand, and I had quite a ways, you know, to walk back to the truck, like I said before. And I had my rifle over my right shoulder. And to get back to the truck from this particular tree stand, to pick up the logging road, I had to cross by, there's a natural artesian spring. Beautiful, beautiful spring. I think that's one of the things that attracts them to that spot, is that spring. It's just beautiful. Anyway, I was coming around the bend, and I got to the pond, the spring, and right off the bank of the water, right off the bank in the water, a little, about 2 feet into the water. We're still real shallow. I noticed what looked like a tree from where I was standing at the time, and I said, what's going on here? I thought I was going crazy, Jeremiah. I really did. There wasn't a tree there. There hasn't been a tree there for as long as I've been alive. You know, where'd it come? What's going on here? So I reluctantly walked closer, and when I got about 30 feet away, the tree turned around and stared at me, and it was a female Sasquatch, a mature, full-grown female Sasquatch. and we were about 30 feet away from each other, looking at each other dead in the eyeballs. And that alone, that part of the encounter alone, was very, very disturbing. Just she had that auburnish color to her as well. No hair on the face. The hair on the facial feature, the face was like a lighter brown shade. It wasn't the auburn like the hair. It was like a lighter brown, tan almost. And this one as well, it didn't have a full conical head. It was somewhere in between a round head and a conical head. And she had like a spiked hairdo, and, where'd you get your hair done, honey? It was kind of spiked off the top of her head. It was just the way it was, I guess. But, yeah, she was big. She was big. She was all of 8 feet. She was a big female. She was just massive. And the most impressive part about her was the buttocks area. Just full of muscle. Just, you could see through her hair, you could see the rip and the striations in her muscles. It was just incredible. And one of the other most impressive parts about her was the thickness from her back to her chest. I would have to say 2.5, 3 feet, in thickness.
Oh, wow.
And probably 3.5, 4 feet across the shoulders. And if she didn't weigh 700, I think I have a theory, and it's not a theory. It's just what I think. I think people underestimate the weight of these things a lot. I don't think a lot of people take into consideration how thick their bones really could be. The muscle mass, is unreal. So the bone, to be a woodland creature like that, they've got to have some pretty thick bone density, I would imagine. So we're standing there just looking at each other, and her eyeball, she didn't move her head, but her eyes flickered. And she saw the tip of that rifle popping up from behind my shoulder. And I said to myself, oh no, what's she going to do? So the look she gave me, Jeremiah, and I'm not saying she spoke to me in mind speak or anything, because she didn't. It was just a reading I got from her. And she was pretty much saying, you ever seen the movie Tombstone where he says, skin that smoke wagon and see what happens?
No, and people are going to tear me apart for that. Yeah.
But that's exactly what the look she gave me was. Go ahead, skin that smoke wagon and see what happens. So, and the other part of what I was reading from her was, if you don't, we aren't going to have any problems. So obviously, I'm still here talking to you. So I didn't skin that smoke wagon, that's for sure. And even if I had wanted to, she would have gotten to me way before I got that weapon off my shoulder. There's no doubt. There is no doubt. And, after that, she took off. She popped up out of the water, got on the bank, took a leap. And the distance was incredible. And I'll get to that in a second. But she took 3 leaps and she was gone. Well, at this, I walked back to the truck and I was an absolute mess. Absolute mess. So I got a few buddies together, and the next day I wasn't about to go back down there alone, that next day. I grabbed a few buddies, we went down there, we found the tracks from when she jumped out of the water. She went 63 feet and 3 leaps. So that's what, 21 feet.
21, yeah.
Averages at, about 21 feet a leap, 63 feet. And in just 3 leaps. And that's, we're talking a 700-800 pound creature. Like I said, being able to move that fast and with that much power, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just unreal. And, And that's when, at that point in 2007, that's when I really decided I needed answers. And that's when I became a researcher and started getting really into the research. And I hooked up with, we're talking, this is years back, 2007. I hooked up with a very well-known Bigfoot researcher. He had a podcast at the time, and I reached out to him, and I'm not going to say his name on over the air. I don't know if he'd want me to do that, but
I don't care. You can go ahead if you want.
Yeah, well, William Jedney.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
nice.
I hooked up with Will, and I was with Will for about 10 years. Ran JRG, his organization for him, and everything, and he taught me a lot. He did. But I decided to, after spending time with him and his group, we parted on good terms, and I went out on my own, started my own group, started my shows, YouTube channel and all that, and got heavy into the research after that, so. And then in 2016, my wife and I were building the cabin on the land that we live in now. And as we were building it, we were living out of a camper because we were, building the cabin. And my wife actually, one day she took the 4-wheeler to go pick blueberries, and she came back and she was white as a ghost. And I'm like, wow, what's going on? What happened? She's like, you're never going to believe it. I said, you saw one, didn't you? She said, yep. And I'm like, you need to show me where. So we went to the blueberry patch where she had been picking blueberries, and she showed me the branch, when it turned around and walked away from her, she showed me the branch that it walked under. And I right off the bat, I said to myself, that's got to be 10 feet. So I got up on the 4-wheeler. I had her hold the bottom of the tape measure down on the ground, and I had to reach as much as I could to get to the bottom of that limb to get a measurement. And to the bottom of the limb, it was 10 foot 6 inches. She said when it walked under that limb to walk away from her, it only cleared the bottom of the branch by about 3 inches. So this thing was about 10 foot 3 inches, give or take. And they were in the blueberry patch, and she was right up close and next to this thing. She said when it stood up, she hadn't even seen it. That's how well, and that's another thing, how well they can camouflage themselves in their own environment. It's unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And she didn't see it till it popped up. So that summer we had a very, very active summer with them. We did a lot of research on the land. I have a lot of other spots that we research up here. Now there's a big difference being, the ones that we have on our property, there's 6 to 8 at any given time. They stick around for the fall, the summer, and they leave, they leave late fall and they come back in the spring. And during the wintertime is when the dogmen show up. I know a lot of people say that, they have, their groups, they run together and you see them together, but I haven't noticed that up here. It seems like up here they don't play so well together, if you will. So, in 2016 was a very interesting year while we were building the cabin, and the ones on that piece of property that we're living on now, they're very relaxed. They've never given us any trouble. They've never gotten aggressive, except for that look I was given by the female. I don't really consider that aggressiveness, though. More of a warning, I guess. But we haven't had any problems with them whatsoever. We do research a lot of other spots where, we've had boulders. You can feel the tension in the air. You can tell they're more aggressive groups than what we have. We've had boulders thrown at us, logs thrown at us, you name it, you name it, they've been tossed at us. But we usually do. We don't, when we go out and do research, we don't wander around the woods all night. Because I found that if you do that, you're not gonna see them unless they want you to.
Absolutely.
You're just not gonna see them. You go out looking, you're not gonna see them. But I tell you what, if you can make camp, you start a fire and you throw some bacon on a grill or on the fire, bacon on the fire, and they'll come in and check you out if they're in the area. They'll come in and check you out. That's for sure.
Yeah, you get it, dude. Yep. You are, and I'm saying that because, man, it lines up with so many different things I've heard. I've never had a visual sighting myself, but
right,
I can tell that you get it, how this all works.
Absolutely.
Can you try? Is it even possible to explain to someone who has never seen something that is 8 foot tall what it's like to see when you saw that female Sasquatch, just to see something that it's that much taller than you? What does that do to you as a human being?
Humbles you. Very quick. And being an ex-MMA fighter, I was competing at the time too, and I wasn't scared of much, but I knew that was one match I wasn't going to win. So yeah, it's hard to fathom, like you said, if someone's never seen one, it's very hard to get across to them how massive these things are. And like we've been saying the whole time, the athleticism, the size, it's just incredible. It's just totally incredible.
Does what you saw, does anyone in the athletic field or MMA field or bodybuilding field even come close to what you see when you have a visual of the big guys?
Not even close. And I've seen some pretty big dudes. Like the heavyweights in the MMA circuits are massive men, 6'5", 265 pounds, 300 pounds, they're cutting weight down from 300 pounds to make 265, you know what I mean? And those are big men, but put them next to a Sasquatch that's 8 foot tall, weighing 800 pounds, they're going to look like a little boy, So yeah, it's very hard to get someone to wrap their head around it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it 20 years later. So yeah, it's just it's wild. It's wild. In that in 2016 we had that's when we had our first Dogman encounter, my wife and I. I don't know if you wanted me to get into that at all.
Yeah, I'd say if it is part of the story, then I'd say, yeah, feel free to share. Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Cause, there's a part of it. I think it's linked somehow. And it was, it was coming to, the time where the Sasquatch were getting ready it would have been time for them to take off. I don't know where they go for the winter. I don't know, but they always come back. It's a pattern every year, but we went to my parents for dinner. My parents live, a few miles away on their piece of property, and they're all connected. We had been down there for dinner, and we came back. We were cruising down our road, and on the other side of not on our side of the road where our property is, but on the other side of the road. Okay, something about that other side, we don't own that part. That's all state land across from where we live. I had always been something about that piece of land, or that land in particular, has just always freaked me out. It's always given me a bad gut feeling for some reason. So we're cruising down the road. My wife's got a little bit of a lead foot, and I said, "Stacy, slow down. You're going to hit that guy on the side of the road right there." And I'm thinking, what's someone doing out here? walking around, and we got close and we realized that we weren't looking at a person. She slammed on the brakes, and it popped out and in the middle of the road and turned and looked right at us. And this one was brown. And we were so close to this thing, you could see the saliva pouring out of its mouth. You know, it was, and it just stared at us. So very smug. The only way I can describe the look it was giving us was a very smug, arrogant look. You know, if that makes sense. Very like cocky looking, you know, like I can do to you whatever I want to do to you, you know, some along those lines, you know. Excuse me. So it got back down. It got back down on all fours, and it ran over to our side of the road onto our property. So I'm like, yeah, okay, great, this is lovely. And we immediately got out of the car. We got in the camper and locked the doors. I loaded the weapons because I had dealings with Sasquatch. You know, that was it had turned into a normal thing, you know, with our research and living on this piece of property. But seeing this dog man was a totally different experience, and it was scary, you know. So we're laying there and we're trying to just chill out. We're talking about, you know, what we just saw. What did we just see? And all of a sudden, something slammed into the side of the camper. Boom. And it shook the camper so bad it felt like the camper was going to tip over. So we heard Harry Carey going on outside we heard trees snapping and branches breaking and grunts. The next day I wake up and I walk out, get out of the camper, and there's trees knocked down. There's logs all over the place. There's tracks, you know, there's Bigfoot tracks and there's Dogman tracks. Makes me wonder if that big one, and these were 18-inch tracks. That big one that my wife saw. Those were his tracks. I could tell because I casted many of his footprints in the past before this. So, makes me wonder if this thing was close to the camper and that Sasquatch was trying to protect us somehow. I don't know. But all I know is there was two creatures or animals or whatever, beings, entities, whatever you want to call them, going at it outside of the camper. It was unreal. All the weird things I've experienced in my life, that's right at the top of the list, for sure.
It must have been just a horrifying experience. Do you guys have any?
It was horrifying.
Do you guys have any neighbors that are close to it all, or?
No, we have one neighbor that's about 2 miles down the road, but we got in a little land feud a few years back, so we really don't speak to them. But so I've never had a chance to come out and ask them if they've had anything weird go on, you know, on their property. I imagine 2 miles for these things is nothing. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've had experiences with them, you know. So yeah, but we don't have many. There's not many neighbors close. There's just the one neighbor. It's a gentleman and his mother.
Gotcha.
They're about 2 miles down the road. So I don't know if they've experienced anything.
I think, yeah, this might be a good time to ask. You kind of alluded to something at the beginning. After experiencing interactions with more than a few of these Sasquatch in the area, have you come to any conclusions or thoughts about what you think, what it is that's going on with them? How would you categorize or classify them?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a tough one. Like I told you, like I said before, and I think this is what you were just referring to. I used to believe they were a primate, an undiscovered primate. a little more adapted to walk on 2 feet and whatnot. I used to, I thought there was some sort of mountain gorilla, mountain ape or whatever. But that didn't, once I got out on my own, once I started doing more research and, got out on my own, weird things would start to happen. After activity, we'd see orbs. Orbs would follow us out of the woods and, weird stuff like that. Things in the crafts, and I know all the, how do I put this? All these weird phenomenons, Jeremiah, they are all interconnected somehow. I don't know how, but in my opinion, I think they're all interlinked somehow.
No, they are.
All these different, without a doubt, all these different phenomenons, they're all linked. I mean, crafts in the sky, orbs, just spirit. We've had a lot of paranormal stuff happen inside the house. They bang on the walls outside, when they feel like messing around, and but yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what they are. I think they're very ancient. I don't think they're an animal, and I don't think they're a human. I think they're something all in their own, if that makes sense. Something all in their own category. I think they have abilities that we can't fathom yet, that we can't even begin to fathom. So yeah, I really don't know, Jeremiah, to be honest with you. I've battled with that in my head for years now, of what these things actually are, and what their purposes and what they're doing here and whatnot. So yeah, I wish I had an answer for that question, bud, but I just don't.
I think it makes sense, though. It's just a thing where you're trying to figure it out as you go along. What kind of things are going on inside the house?
Things falling off the walls. I've got pictures of spirits flying through the air inside the house. There was one, I'll give you an example. One night I got up. I didn't know I had gotten up. I didn't realize till the next day. I'm going through my phone, and there's pictures and video from me walking around the cabin with my phone, filming and taking pictures. And I catch this small being, and you're gonna think I'm crazy, and everyone else out there is probably gonna think I'm nuts too. But I've got the picture to prove it. It looked like a fairy with wings, floating in the air, and that's the only way I can describe it. I'm definitely going to send you that picture because you got to check it out. It's unbelievable. Things falling off the walls, noises in the night, waking us up, from upstairs, up in our attic, just very, very, very weird things. One that we had, when we moved, we moved down to North Carolina in 2018, I think it was. And when we moved there, we were looking for a good spot to research, and luckily down the road from the house we were living in, there was an old train trestle. And we started doing a lot of investigating there. And I don't know if once you become in contact with these things, if they sort of tag you. And you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by that? Like they kind of tag you.
I think they tag you and they unlock you in a way.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, we are.
Because we had a lot of action down there, a ton of action, and more. We did see a Sasquatch one night. We were under the train trestle, under the bridge, and it was myself, my wife, and my daughter, who was 17 at the time. And we heard footsteps walking through the bayou, like heavy footfall, 2 legs. And I'm sitting there, okay, here we go. Are they going to come out? and we saw eye shine. We saw blue eye shine and red eye shine. And there was 4 individual sets of eyes, but 3 of them disappeared. But the blue set kept walking, and under the train trestle, there's a brook that runs through there. Okay, there's a brook, and this Sasquatch went up on the other side. Okay, he was on the other side of the bridge, other side of the brook. He walked up the hill, and I lit him up with my spotlight. I just lit him right up, and he was gray, like almost even a silver, and the vegetation I had measured it afterwards was about 7 feet, 7.5 feet tall. The vegetation was, and his head was a good foot over. We could see from the chest up, so we could see about 2 feet of him. And he was massive, bigger than that female I saw. But he also looked a little bit different. Okay, this one looked more apish than the other 2 than the ones I had seen up here. This one did look more ape like. But he didn't pay us any mind. He turned and looked at us once, and continued to walked away. And that's the last we saw of him. That's the last we saw of him.
Do you think there's different variations within, let's think of like Sasquatch as a whole? Do you think there's some then that have human-like features and some that are more ape-like?
Yeah. See, okay. I believe just in North America alone, we have different types, let alone around the world, like with the Yeti and the Agagwe and, the Yowie, those are separate. I believe right here in North America, I think there's, 4 or 5 different subspecies of these things, depending on the region you're in. So yeah, and they all look different. Even the same type, even if there is different types, even ones of the same type are going to look. Every individual is going to look different a little bit, But this one in North Carolina looked totally different. You could tell it was a different subspecies, in my opinion. I think I know I can feel it in my gut. It was a different subspecies, and a lot of the in North Carolina, especially more so than up here, we had a lot of the paranormal stuff going on, like with the orbs. After we had that encounter with the gray one, we were followed out of the woods for an hour, and I got that on video too. This orb followed us around for about a half an hour. It was about 60 feet away from us and about 30 feet up in the air, and it just floated right in front of us, and it would get small and then it would get big. And my wife has some abilities, and she was trying to communicate with it, talk to it, and every time she would talk to it or ask it a question, it would get bigger, get big, and then it would shrink right back down again.
To the orb?
Yep, an orange orb, yeah, yep. And we saw a lot of crafts, a lot of crafts in the sky, down that trestle. Just a lot of weird things happen down there. It was definitely a hot spot, and I believe these things. I will say this, and I would have laughed at this, years back, but I think there's a chance they could be an interdimensional.
Did she start to have those abilities before or after she started to have interactions with Bigfoot?
She has had them since she was a little girl, but they have since we started getting into this, years back. They seem like they've intensified. Her senses are sharpening, with her abilities. Yeah, they definitely grown more powerful, if you will. Even since we've been married, they've gotten more powerful, her abilities. We did see, a lot of crafts in the sky. And, yeah, I'll tell you this too, man. I leave this out of a lot of my interviews I do because I still have problems fathoming that I saw this thing. There, we're on top of the bridge, and we can hear footfall coming. And I have this on video and still shot as well, so I will send you these tomorrow as well, just to show you. So we started filming, and Stacy started taking snapshots, and I was on the camera, the video, and we didn't see anything. We didn't see a thing, you know. And then all of a sudden, after we hear the footfall go away, these blue orbs come flying out of the sky. They do figure eights in front of us, you know, about 10 times, and then they shoot back up into the sky. And this was right after we heard this footfall. So when we get home, we analyze the video, and lo and behold, what it looks like, it's an upright, whatever this thing is, it was upright walking, gray in color, and it looked like a reptilian creature. And it was carrying a massive dead wild boar. I know that sounds crazy.
I've never heard anything like that before. That's really unique. So it was the reptilian was carrying a wild boar. Wow.
A dead wild boar.
Okay. Yeah. Now I've heard that with Bigfoot, but not with that.
Yeah. You and me both. That was the first I've ever heard or heard anything like that. You know, and you're right. You hear about Sasquatch, Bigfoot carrying around dead animals, but you know, I couldn't believe it. And this thing, it had to, I couldn't tell how tall it was because of, you know, the video. If I would have seen it in person, I would have been able to judge it more. But it was at least as tall as I was. I'm 6'1". So it was at least as tall as I was, but it had that to be able to carry, and it was cradling. It had that boar cradled in its arms, like carrying it like nothing, Jeremiah. It just crazy. Three long fingers on each arm, or on each hand. It had the reptilian looking snout, and it was gray in color. Yeah, walking right through the water. You know, water moccasin, alligator infested water.
Right. Wow.
You know, it just crazy. It still blows my mind. But yeah, I would definitely send you that stuff tomorrow. It was just crazy. And after crafts in the sky at that spot, orbs, crafts in the sky, a lot of vocalizations, sightings. It was a pretty wild spot. It's where my wife's mother lives, down in eastern North Carolina. But we did move. We moved back up here in 2021. It was the spring of 2021, and turkey season had just started here. And I went down behind at this point, the cabin's built. We were living in it at the time. I take a walk out back. I want to try to see if I can harvest myself a turkey. And there was nothing. I didn't see any, hear any. It was a dead morning. The woods were extremely, extremely quiet. As I'm walking back, I feel like I'm being watched. I can feel something with eyeballs on me. There was no doubt about it. Something told me to look to my left. When I look to my left, I see an upright wolf-looking creature, gray in color, the ears, straight up standing ears. I was about, I would say, 80 feet away, and it had its arms, and I have a picture of it. I'll send you that tomorrow as well. It had it had its arms wrapped around a dead deer, and the deer, you can see the bowels of the deer hanging out of it and splattered all over the ground. and it stared at me, and I had my 12 gauge on me, and it makes me wonder, if I hadn't had that gun and it hadn't had lunch already, would I have been on the menu?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was a pretty scary experience. But yeah, I was able to get a picture, and then I turned around and I backed up. I walked out, facing this thing in case it did take a charge at me. I would have had time to react. But all it did was it just kept its eyeballs on me and followed me with by turning its head. Didn't move any of its body, didn't move its arms, didn't move the deer it was holding, just moved its head and followed me to make sure I was leaving. Yep. So yeah, that was pretty intense as well.
I want to ask you something as someone who's been in the field for over 20 years to get your thoughts on it, because I am very new to the field. I would say just over 5 years. And when it comes to Bigfoot, probably a year and a half to 2 years. So super new, right? Talked to a lot of people, but very new. Right. Now, looking over the last 20 years, do you feel like things are getting more and more, more people are talking about them? It's hard for me to tell because I just don't know if more people are listening and that's why people are reaching out, or if it feels like as we go further and further along, there's more people or more things that are happening. I don't know. I'm trying to work through it.
I think it's I think it's a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. I think people are getting more comfortable talking about it because I think people are starting to realize that these things are real, and I think more people are seeing them. And with the developments, with houses going up in rural, they're building these housing developments in rural areas now, and we're encroaching on their territory, so people are seeing more of them. So I think, people are getting more, being more acceptable of these things, So I think it's a little bit of both that you mentioned. People are just, they're seeing them and they're feeling more comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it. I think the more I talk to people, it just feels like certain areas of the U.S., when people say window areas or, the veil is thinning, I think that's an absolute real thing. I mean, there are certain areas in this country where just stuff is coming from somewhere, man, or it's just showing up, dude. I don't know what's going on.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, I would have laughed at like the whole portal interdimensional thing years ago, but I truly think that's a pretty good. I think that's a huge possibility. I really do. I mean, my partner Nick Valente and I were talking about this the other night. My podcast partner and who I help run the International Dogman project, Nick. Mm-hmm. We were talking about that. How there's just more and more things people are reporting seeing. More creatures, more cryptids, more paranormal stuff going on. So they coming from somewhere. And here's the deal. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a nice track, in an open field, okay, and disappear. No trees around, nothing. It did just one track. Especially when you see it in the snow. You know what I mean? Where are the other tracks?
Right.
You're in a wide open field. Where are the tracks? So are these things able to access, a portal or something at will? I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a strong possibility. I mean, physics has already proven there's other dimensions, so I don't know why people think that's such a far out there idea, you know?
Mm. You've mentioned that you've had multiple times where you've had visual sightings, so you're far past that. But what is,
Yes.
what is is there a main goal that you're working towards where it's like, if you accomplish that, you can walk away from this, like, I did what I was trying to do, we're done? Or can you ever walk
Right.
away from this?
I'm never going to be able to walk away from this. It's an obsession now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's a healthy obsession or not, but it's an obsession. I need more answers. I don't know if I'm ever going to get them, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to get them. Try to get the answers. You know, maybe one day we will. I don't know. I think it's going to take the community to come together a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the reason I do this is I feel, you know, being an experiencer and a researcher, you know, I don't do it for my own reasons. I do it because it's my duty as a researcher and an experiencer to educate others on this subject. That's why I do it.
I think that's great, because the thing is with the Bigfoot subject and with Dogman and everything in between, it's not just a thing where stuff happened in the past and now we're having to deal with it. There are people having experiences every day. And as you said, like, they've got questions, they're trying to figure it out, they're trying to work through it. And I think what you're doing
Right.
is very admirable. And
Yeah, I
people
appreciate that.
need to be doing that, just because the new people that, had a sighting probably today somewhere,
Yep.
they're trying to figure it out, man. And that's happening, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. They're trying to wrap their head around it right now. You know, someone that saw one today or yesterday or whenever, you know, so someone somewhere is sitting there tonight in their chair. They're trying to wrap their head around what they saw. That's my opinion, you know.
Jeremiah,
Absolutely.
this has been a really eye-opening discussion. Thank you for sharing what you have experienced over the years. I want to make sure that you were able to share everything that you would want to share on the show tonight.
Yeah, I do. I was able to share most of it. I just want to give some advice to some people out there that are just getting into this. Don't ever go looking for these things alone, ever, 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 ever. And look up in the trees. I think a lot of people forget to look up. They're so concentrated on what's around them and what's on the ground for track, and as far as tracks and stuff like that, and tree breaks and structures and stuff like that, they forget to look up in the trees. But these things, dogmen and Bigfoot, they can climb with the best of them, you know. So that's the other piece of advice I have to give. Always look up, and if carry something to protect yourself. And like I said, even if it's, most of these things, they just don't want anything to do with you. You know, the Bigfoot, they don't want anything to do with you, really. But they are curious. They can be curious, and there are aggressive groups and types of these things out there. You know, not all of them want to sit around the fire and play the fiddle. You know what I mean? With you, there are some aggressive ones out there. So, just be prepared, be safe.
That's great.
Advice.
I'd say that's great advice. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jeremiah. And do you mind reminding my listeners how they can keep up to date with what you're doing, and maybe even how they can reach out to you if they would like to do that? Sure.
Yeah, anyone can reach me on Facebook Messenger. Even if you're more comfortable with calling me on the phone, I have no problem with that. I'll even throw my phone number out there. It's 518-806-8071. If you've seen one of these things, or you need advice or whatever, feel free to call, because I've been in that position before as well, and I know what it's like. I know how it can really dig deep at you, and yeah. So, and I just they can we have our International Dogman Project groups online. Check us out. Just type in International Dogman Project, and I think we have 17 areas now where we have a IDP organization out of Maine, New York, Southwest, Southeast, Europe. We have all sorts of IDP groups now, and we have 2 more groups. It's called On the Trail in Search of Living Legends, or excuse me, on that's the name of my show, On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. It's On the Trail Cryptid and Paranormal Research, and we have Secret Society of the Paranormal and Cryptid Research. On those are both on Facebook, and you can check out our YouTube channel. It's Paranormal and Cryptid Crossroads Research on YouTube, and it's got all 7 seasons of one show, On the Trail in Search of Living Legends, which that's where we interview experiencers. And we have another show called the Cryptid Consortium Podcast, where each week we cover a different cryptid, when we give our thoughts at the end of the show, what we, if we think they're real, what we think they are, so on and so forth. So yeah, check us out. I think you won't be disappointed.
That's great. I'll have those linked in the show notes. But thank you for coming on, Jeremiah. We got one more question for you afterwards, but I appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Jeremiah.
Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you truly for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Jeremiah's experience with the juvenile Sasquatch is a prime example of how strange and powerful these creatures can be, and how they've left lifelong impacts on those who encounter them. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes, and share this one with a friend who's into Bigfoot cryptids or just loves a good mystery. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please be sure to follow the show, and if you could leave a review, it really helps more people find us. And if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot encounter, especially in the Adirondacks of New York, I want to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to grab your tickets for Sasquatch Summerfest happening July 11th through the 12th in Oak Ridge, Oregon. Bigfoot Society listeners get a special deal with 2-day passes for the price of a 1-day pass using code BFS at checkout. You can find those tickets at www.sasquatchsummerfest.com. Thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.